We got sun coming in. We can do some tanning while we speak. I just wanted to briefly start. I think a lot of people would have an experience like this. It's extremely personal, extremely vulnerable. And for your one aim coming out of this to be to share it and distill all of this and kind of feed it to the masses in a way that's digestible, I think that's a really noble offering and a really beautiful thing to do, because it's a personal thing, it's vulnerable, and I think we need more of that. So I just wanted to thank you on behalf of all of us that get to benefit from this without doing 10 days of silent meditation.
I want to thank you, dude, for taking the time to be a sparring partner in this journey. And I'm excited. I think the one thing in sharing this that I want to caveat all this with is everyone has their own experience and everyone's reality is different. So this is just one unique perspective to Blue Cavity, but everyone interprets the 10 days differently. And so I think that's really important, just knowing that my reality can be very different than yours. And there are lots of different opinions out there, and some great recordings that people can listen to. But that's just first caveat of the day.
Good stuff. This is Luke's experience in the meditation retreat, not everyone. I think it's well said. I want to start out by just pointing out, I think if you were to tell me to make someone in a lab who is probably going to have the hardest time in a silent retreat, out of anyone I know, you're definitely the most social. Your battery for human interaction is like off the charts and unlimited. Yeah. So I think going into this, I was a little bit nervous for you, just like thinking you're going to get there and be like, trying to wink at someone else, be like, yo, what's up? And they're going to be like, chill. So I want to let people in to your chapter of life before going on this retreat, because a lot of people, they say I need a vacation. You chose probably, in my opinion, one of the most rigorous, disciplined silence retreats that's available to people. And you don't make that choice, in my opinion, without curiosity, but also a little bit of that desperation, a little bit of that voice saying to you, I need to go sit with myself for 10 days. So would you mind letting us into the quality of your mind and the chapter of life that made you make this choice?
Yeah, you framed that up very well. I think I was in a place where, for me, the Vipassana retreat kept coming up in certain people that I had met, and it felt like this pull almost from the universe or whatever you want to call it. But it took me getting to a point where I felt like, honestly, I had no other choice to make it happen. There's a difference between saying that you want to do something and then making the time for something. And I got to a point where my mind felt extremely distracted. I, was on this journey of entrepreneurship that I felt confidence in, but had gotten to a place where, my headspace was just compromised very frequently. And I was running at a bunch of different things. And I knew that, now is the best time to make something like this happen. And if I didn't do it now, I don't know when I ever would. I think I had been exposed to a lot of dopamine in the last few years. But New York City...
You certainly have. For those of us who follow your page, a lot of fun trips going on.
No, I think just like in New York, working like we were working, traveling like we were traveling, and filling ourselves with just a lot of like adventure in a beautiful way. For me, I started to use that as a distraction. And as I took more time with myself, I started to notice that I had some old habit patterns that were not something that I wanted to live the rest of my life for. And it took, a practice of meditation daily to kind of get used to this idea of how much I could benefit. And it started with just 20 minutes a day. At sometimes I would, flex that up to like 45 minutes, but most of the time it was like 10 to 15 minutes if I got lucky, but I just felt so much calmer after that. And so I'll stop there.
I think something that you're saying is important. I like to talk about it as it's almost like a water balloon. When you poke a hole in the water balloon, it's really hard to go back, So that initial poke of awareness that you're getting from those meditation sessions, you get a sense of what calmness feels like. And it's really hard to shut off that little quiet inner whisper that tells you something's wrong when you feel the chaos of your mind going crazy.
Absolutely.
I think, all it takes is maybe that 10 minutes to poke that hole in people's water balloon. I think a good place to start, now that the table's set, appreciate you sharing that, is just take us on your first day to the setting. Maybe just very briefly, what was this place like? Like, I think a lot of people are picturing like, maybe a mountain castle with a bunch of monks walking around. Like, what did it look like? And just bring us into the setting.
Yeah, so there's over 300 different locations around the world that host Vipassanas, and it can look different every time, obviously. Mine was in Massachusetts, in Shelburne, and so I took a 5-hour train from New York City. I caught an Uber with a few people, and very quickly realized the demographic was a little bit different than I was expecting in a good way. It was an older crowd. But funny enough, advice I got from a friend before going in was to not socialize before noble silence starts. Noble silence is implying no eye contact, no verbal communication. And that starts 2 hours after you get there. So you have a little bit of time to like settle in. And I had caught an Uber with people to the meditation retreat, but I was a little bit hesitant to interact. The reason my friend had told me to not interact was because you start to develop these stories of these people naturally, like we always do. But when you're with your thoughts for 10 days and slowly moving past these people, naturally you can start to fantasize like their story, and it takes away from the whole process of the experience. And so I show up on site, got my things situated, and then went to the dining hall. And in the dining hall, there were 60 men on one side. On the other side of the dining hall in a separate room was the women's dining hall. I have my head down when I walk in, and I'm looking for registration, trying to, not make eye contact with anybody out of this person's advice. And all of a sudden I have 3 women like waving at me and snapping at me. And they're like, I think you're in the wrong dining hall. The men's side is on that side. I was like, good start.
You ruined all those women's noble silence, I'm sure.
Well, noble silence hadn't started, luckily, but it was still like this thing. I felt out of place. I was just like
who the fuck is that?
I was just like, get me to this like first meditation and I'll be good. But it was, there was some like awkward tension. So anyway, I go to sit down. You sit at essentially cafeteria tables in this dining hall, and very quickly got to know some of the men around me, all older gentlemen. We didn't talk about work or anything like that. They just talked about, their experience with Vipassana or meditation, where they were from, that kind of thing. But yeah, it opened up for me just this curiosity of like, all right, I have really no idea what to expect. I had read obviously what it is, but there was a ton of
a noble bee.
The noble bee. There was a ton of curiosity starting to linger.
Right.
So yeah, that was the first like few hours of the experience.
Wow. And just because I do think it's important before we dive into your experience, Can you talk just very briefly, set the table on the structure of the day? So, how many hours are you sitting in meditation? What does your wake up, bedtime look like? Maybe just lay that out. Promise we're not trying to sell this retreat. That being said, use my code. So yeah, just kind of give us an itinerary just to help people grasp like what is going on at these things.
So wake up gong is at 4 a.m. They have one of the older students, so somebody that has been before, volunteer to wake up at 3:50. He walks through the hallways and hits the gong. That's the first bell. The next one's at 4:20. And starting at 4:30, you have to start meditating. There's this split where some meditations are group meditations in the hall. Then some are on your own, where you can do it in your room. Once you get a cell, you can do it in the cell. But 4:30 to 6:30 is a 2-hour meditation. It's the longest one of the day.
That's crazy.
Grueling, man. To start your morning like that was tough. But we would end it at 6:30, go get breakfast from 6:30 to 8. So a lot of times you would finish up before. You could go, walk around in the nature. And a lot of times, like, people would use this to just kind of like catch up on sleep. That's what I would do, at least. Then the next sit is from 8 to 11 a.m. So they break it up in chunks. You have like an hour and a half where you sit in the group hall. You go back to your room for 10 minutes, and then you have another sit. Lunch break is the longest break, from 11 to 1 p.m. And yeah, during that time, it's probably like my favorite part of the day, just because like you can actually eat.
Yeah. Be my favorite part too.
Dude, like how much I looked forward to just like those little small things were wild, because they strip everything away from you. And the cheap dopamine that we're used to is just like, it evaporates. But to land the plane on the day, we wrap that at 1 p.m. Then we have a 4-hour block of meditation from 1 to 5.
Wow.
Then you have tea from 5 to 6. There's some fruit if you want to eat fruit, but a lot of times old students are challenged to fast from 11:30 a.m. to the next breakfast in the morning, 6:30. So you only have a window of 5 hours to eat if you've been to a Vipassana before. And then come back, you have a meditation sit from 6 to 7. And then you have an hour discourse with Goenkaji, who is this incredible human that brought Vipassana to North America and was an incredible teacher himself. So these are recordings from like early 2000s before he passed away. And luckily, again, another highlight of the day, he just had this humor and wit about him that for me made the experience so much more enjoyable, and used like these analogies to explain the concepts in a very digestible way. That was in the evening. And then after that, it's I think like 8:30. You come back and you meditate for the last like 45 minutes. And then it's bedtime. So last meditation ends at 9. You usually kind of get back to your place at 9:15, and then you got your 4:30 or 4 a.m. wake up call.
When you got there, was there a moment like, I made a huge mistake? Like, oh, fuck. Like that, because that just, especially for someone, right? Like, you had a meditation practice, but largely, probably fair to say, 40 minutes or under, right? Like, max. So even just starting with that first 2-hour sit, was there, especially with the whole retreat in front of you, I'm curious, just to make it relatable, because I know for me, I would be like, what the fuck? Like that would take all my horsepower right off the bat.
I think there's some adrenaline the first day or two, but once you settle in, it really starts to weigh on your mentals. I think anytime I would project forward how much more time I would have to meditate
Right.
for that day or for the week, I would lose a lot of momentum.
Right.
So what I like to do is just break it down, brick by brick, if you will, and think about like the next set or even the next like 5 to 10 minutes and be like, here's my next goal, and then not think about anything else. I never had a point where I was like, I'm leaving, but I had a lot of points where I broke, which we can talk about. But and at that point, I was like, I know that I'm in this container, and like this is going to be everything that it's supposed to be for me. But it was, probably the most challenging experience I've ever had in my life, physically and mentally. Like when you sit in lotus for 11 hours a day, 10 days in a row, like your knees and your back start to give, and they challenge you to have strong determination, which is basically in the group sits, which is like 3 to 4 hours a day, to not move after you learn the technique of Vipassana, day 4. And there were times, in the later stages, 6, 7, 8, where I broke, and I was like, I need a chair. Like, this is horrific. Some older gentlemen will sit in the back, or older women, but yeah, I got to a point several times where I was like thinking about how to get out of that pain. But
Wow. I think it's such a universal takeaway, just the next step, right? You talked about A to Z in your last on the top. But just, chopping it down. Like if you start to think on that first session, I have 10 more days of this, like you're toast. I've been in the lounging lotus for like 30 minutes and I'm about to break right now. I can't imagine sitting in the lotus for 2 hours.
yeah.
And then, I mean, a lot of what you just said, I think, can be taken into everyday life. You talked about having strong determination. I think something that might catch people off guard with an experience like this is, is this accessible to your everyday person, your everyday Joe, right? Like, I know that you've done a lot of adventurous things. Do you think that this type of experience and that determination and that willpower, is that something that we all have inside of us that we can unlock using our mind? And I think maybe a good frame when you're thinking about this is like, when you looked around at this retreat, I'm sure you saw people from all walks of life, ages, states of health. I'm curious to know if you think that this is something that everyone can do.
Yeah. I think my personal opinion is that Vipassana is for everyone, but each person has to find their own way to Vipassana. You can't force it on somebody. To me, it's almost like you need it, and you search it out for yourself, because it is so challenging once you're inside that you need that self-determination and that willpower to conquer it. Otherwise, it's like you resent the person that pushed you there.
Right.
But I do think there is a place for everyone to experience it. What I will say is the nice thing, and what resonated a lot about Vipassana to me, is it's non-sectarian. So they don't push a religion on you. Derives from Buddha, and it has a lot of like religious, core values, but it's not like you need to accept, the 10 Commandments or the Quran, or you're out and going to hell. It's kind of like, these are just like the core values we believe in, and it leads to a healthier life.
That's really refreshing.
Yeah.
And I feel like something that would draw people in. A lot of religions are kind of more follow our tenets or get the fuck out, This seems very welcoming. I'd like to dive into some of your other takeaways, because I think you did a really beautiful job of sharing a lot of the reflections that you had. So in addition to what you just shared, something that struck out to me from your writing was you said another part of the teaching includes space to see the universality in everyone. And you said that I was able to see that the same spark that's within me is in everyone else. Can you just talk about how when stimulus, words, thoughts, communication, cell phones, like when all that's stripped away, it feels like you were able to see the commonality in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious for you to say more about that.
Yeah, I think I had realized for myself that I was carrying a lot of judgment in my day-to-day life. And one of the core teachings of Vipassana is when you are miserable, you project that misery onto other people. And there were definitely times over the last year where I was miserable in my own mind, and I created these narratives of projecting that onto other people in order to feel better about myself.
Right.
And, stripping the dopamine away and then really getting in touch with the teachings, your body's sensations, and sitting with your mind makes you understand that, yeah, we all are essentially leaves falling from the same tree.
I love that.
Which is something that I think, I don't know if you coined, but you taught me way back when. And, I felt that, I think, for the first time of just like seeing myself in everyone else and being less judgmental. Like everyone has their own story, and being less reactive to other people around me, and having like love and compassion for, not just friends, not just family, but strangers, even enemies, like opening that door to try and understand everyone's perspective.
That's really well said. I wonder if also seeing all these people from all walks of life, prioritizing the same space and doing what you said is the hardest thing you've ever done, probably shows you like, we might have a lot that's not in common, but the fact that you guys are doing this, like I can absolutely respect that and see that common urge in all of us.
Absolutely. There were multiple times, like you just, without talking to these people, you get to know them extremely well, and you start to notice how much body language you can interpret just by being aware and not have anything else to really pay attention to. And yeah, there were times where, someone might leave the meditation hall because they're sobbing, or I'll speak for myself. Like there were times where I would come out of my room and I had red eyes because I'd been, crying for 15 minutes after like having some sort of revelation or memory. And to me, the energy within the space was very comforting. People were struggling, but it was almost like we were struggling together.
Right.
And the only way out was through. And that shared willpower that we experienced together was like such a deep bonding experience.
Wow. That's beautiful. Probably one of my favorite things from your experience, hearing you talk about it and reading it, was that after each of one of your sits, you would say to yourself either "I'm proud of you" or "let's fucking go." And what you told me before was that you don't know if you've ever given yourself that type of love and that type of recognition for doing anything. I think self-love, not only for me and for you and a lot of our other friends, but just in the world right now, is a really big, important topic. A lot of people struggle with it. What did this experience teach you about having that self-love, and especially in those moments when you do something excruciatingly difficult, come back, and it sounded like that had a profound impact on you, just giving yourself that moment?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a question there.
No. It's a great question. I think what I called it, and I obviously stole this from somebody else, but being your own cheerleader. One of my favorite stories of Goenkaji was comparing two sides of the river, and on one side you had a bunch of people that were observing the other side, which was, I don't really remember the story, but it was like the fun side. And he's like, there was one person that went to the other side. Everyone knew the path, but it took you stepping forward and moving through the water to get to the other side. No one can do that work for you. Someone can show you the path, but you must walk the path yourself. And I realized in this experience, like how much I had searched for validation in the way that I was moving from friends and from family and romantic partners over the course of my life, just being a recovering people pleaser. And yeah, I got to this point where I started to feel empowered by myself. And like you said, there were stretches throughout the day where we would have a meditation, and I would come back from my room to a full glass of water next to my window, next to the portrait of my grandfather. And I would take one big sip and I would say to myself, let's fucking go, or I'm proud of you, both out loud. And the latter I had never said to myself before, which sounds maybe a little bit cheesy, but it even got to a place later in the week where I was in the mirror saying, I'm proud of you. And that self-love and admiration compounds over time. And the last one, which completely broke me after the final sit, day 10, I got back to my room, full glass of water, took a sip, and I said, I'm proud of you for finishing. And I just broke down because it was such a moving experience and something that I had been through on my own. But to be able to look back on that for me personally and be proud, it was like the first time I really felt proud of myself, and I wasn't feeling like somebody else was proud of me, and I liked that feeling that they were proud of me. It was the first time I could look at myself in the face and be like, that was fucking hard, but I did that. And I got through it with a lot of other people's help, but I'm fucking proud of you for taking that first step. And it's a long, long path, but to know that you can do something hard and push through the resistance that builds over time means a lot.
Wow. I mean, just the fact, I think one thing that really moves me is like that overflow of emotion, like I'm curious what you think triggered that, because, you've done a lot in your life, you've accomplished things on the surface that were really difficult. But the fact that I think this was something that was self-directed, it was you doing it for your own health, and it caused this insane explosion of emotion where maybe in business, doing an impressive, exciting deal or something, like you're doing something hard for someone else or for money, but you did this thing for you. No one else was watching. It was self-directed, and it caused you to have this explosion of emotion, which I think is really a beautiful image of self-love,
Yeah. And again, I think I got to a point where I was inspired by other people, but I knew the universe was like pulling me to do it. I had seen too many signs to question it. And for me, like the way that I live is just following that intuition. If I get signs consistently, why the fuck not,
Yeah.
And once you start listening to that channel or that signal, it's reaffirming over time. So you learn to build that antenna, and too many things happened in a row for me to be like, this is just a coincidence. So I was like, this is happening for a reason, and called it in. Went home after my friend had talked about it in Mexico City, and asked ChatGPT to find me any open course the rest of the year, because these things sell out. Like they go public 3-4 months in advance and then sell out like that.
Wow.
Because one, they're free, but two, because of the experience. And there was one open one in Massachusetts, 8 days out. And yeah, I felt this complete calling to apply. There was a wait list and ended up emailing them like 3 times, explaining the situation, being like, here is where I'm at in life. Here's where I want to be. Here's how Vipassana I think could help me. And then finally, what I think I could provide to Vipassana and the community.
Wow.
And ultimately, they made an extra spot.
One thing I want to come back to, I talk about this a little bit, is when you talked about living in a way where you're noticing signs and synchronicities and following that. In my opinion, that's what it means to live a spiritual and religious life. It's not like burying your head into some book and not questioning it. I think when you're living in a way where everything is connected and you're following clues on this path, to me, that's what it means to be religious. And I think it's a really beautiful way you described it, is if you're living in a way where you're noticing clues and you're reacting to them and you see the world as this connected thing, I think that's just like the most simple way for me to grasp, like, what does it mean to be religious? You believe that there are bigger things at work and you're kind of following that.
Very well said.
So I think that's really cool that you had that experience.
Yeah, and to give you your flowers, man, a lot of my spirituality and like my thought process has come from the teachings of Lando.
Let's go.
And what you've done to educate yourself on the world, spirituality, like you've absorbed so much information. And unlike me, you can retain most of it.
Well, likewise to you. Those are just things that I've learned from others too. And
yeah,
you know,
the benefit that you have with your memory though is you can point to who said what. And a lot of times I just repeat stuff, and you're probably like, dude, I think I brought you onto that. Put you onto that one.
Credit's super important to me. So word to GPT too. I didn't know you knew him as well. He's probably my best friend. I think that's a really beautiful experience, and that sharing that emotional reaction to us, I think, with everyone is a really cool thing, because people are craving that, you know? People are craving that deep self-love. So I think if we can take anything from your experience, it's doing something that's self-directed, that's for only you and for your own health and your own well-being and whatever you want to call it, and persevering through. I think, not that you need to earn self-love, but it's a really beautiful way of saying to yourself, it's like a big warm hug, that version of you that's capable of doing that, hugging that shadow version of yourself or that child and being like, we got this and I'm willing to serve you in that way. So props to you.
Yeah, I think in that same vein, I've been listening back. I have these things that I say in that same vein all the time. I say, walk me through. I'm trying to fucking cut some of these.
We're in the market for new sayings. Just throw them in the comments.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. It's all good.
But in that same vein, yeah, I think loneliness is only going to compound over the next few decades as we become more embedded in technology. And I think this for me was extremely lonely at times, but showed me that I can sit with myself. To your point earlier, being able to have a pull towards being social and being an extrovert, but challenging yourself to really sit in that pain. And for me, I realized that a lot of times I am introverted. Like, I got a lot of energy from it. I missed people for sure, but I also learned so much about myself. I made space in my mind for other memories to come through, more creativity to come through. And that at the end of the day is just such a beautiful way to live. When you're living in the present moment, there's nothing else. And a lot of times for me, I look forward a ton. I spend 70, 80% of my time thinking about the future, especially right now. And so anyway, I think the loneliness thing for me was a big one, like leaning into that loneliness and becoming comfortable in it.
I think also with loneliness, like, I think the reason it's painful to a lot of people, and I've struggled with this as well in my life, is like, I think loneliness gets associated with shame because loneliness is seen as lack, or almost like loneliness that isn't necessarily up to you. It causes a deep shame in people. So this loneliness that you're talking about, where it's self-elected loneliness, it's really interesting that that gave you this energy and this appreciation for it. Because I wonder if people can remove the perception of, it's bad to be lonely, or, if you had it your way, you wouldn't be lonely.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful wellspring of nurturing and love that you can access within yourself.
Yeah, it's that raw emotion, the raw story of like just showing up who you are and accepting that version of you,
Right.
and accepting the version that balls at the end of day 10 like a baby in the shower for 20 minutes, like just like getting to know yourself better and being okay with that.
Yeah.
Showing vulnerability.
Well, the alternative to that is keeping it bottled in, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, what a beautiful thing to access that emotion. Because the alternative to bawling in the shower for 20 minutes isn't not having a reason to bawl in the shower. It's having that and numbing yourself and pushing that part of you away.
I will say too, the
to you.
timing of all of this was just so divine. And that was another thing, is just like this feeling of immense gratitude for the experience, the people, but most importantly, it was just like the timing. Like, because I'm in such a transformative place where a lot of things had shifted in my mind, to have this experience and quote unquote like enlightenment into like what self could really look like. What I feel like is the first time I've actually talked to myself and communicated with my mind. Such a blessing, and it's a lifelong adventure that I will continue down. But yeah, once you get to your point, like you pop that balloon a little bit, it's so hard to go back. And already I feel this pull to try it again because of how much growth you just compound into a very short amount of time.
I think that's the beautiful thing about life and about this journey that our souls are on, is that like the water balloon, like it's all about evolving and growth and progress. We're not craving falling back, even though we might do that from our habits and our egos. Like once you have that taste of what a more enlightened state could look like, or a more peaceful state, you're going to strive towards that. So it's encouraging for people, you don't have to white knuckle hold on to everything good that happens.
Yeah.
Which I think there's two things I want to touch on. I think this is a nice segue. You talked about memories. I want to hear you tell the story about the owl. What happened in that moment for you? And then your best guess, your best shot in the dark as to like why, when you're deprived of all senses, does that give your body space to maybe release things that it's holding on to? Because I think that was like a kind of a magical moment.
Yeah, no, it was beautiful. I think it was day 2. So you're settled into the experience, and during one of the rest periods, or even maybe my meditation, I felt like I was, for the first time, actually like somewhat clear-headed, where I could like, feel presence for 30 to 60 seconds maybe. And I was sitting on my bed. I had a picture of my grandpa next to my window, and granted, your window is next to your bed, right? It's like a really small space. But all of a sudden, like I heard this owl call, and for whatever reason, that owl brought me back to 8-year-old Luke sitting on the bed with my mom. And immediately I felt like this wave of emotion. One, because of just like the love I think I felt in my childhood, fortunately, but also too, like this sense of regret that through the adventures that we've been on the last 6 years post college, I've neglected a lot of time with my family, and those memories of, my mom sitting on my bed with me in childhood and hearing that owl like are so core to who I am. The values that I was raised in for me is just like something I always want to hold on to. Those are values I want to live by. And yeah, the regret of time spent away from family, but also just like this subtle reminder of like, have your values shifted? And if so, like how much? Like what are you really focused on? And so that one sound brought so much up for me. And to your second question, it's a great one. I honestly don't know. I think my best guess would just be in the back of your mind, there's a lot of information. And because we're constantly distracting ourselves, we forget a lot of the things that can be core to us as we chase big goals or live life even. Some of that stuff is moved to the side unless you're very intentional. And that's like, to me, what the practice of meditation can be about is just like, it's almost a reminder of what's important, because all the other stuff doesn't matter. The present moment is all we have. And so, yeah, in that presence, I just felt a lot of clarity in my mind and was able to tap back into memories and experiences that I hadn't thought about in 15, 20 years.
Well said. I think when you talk about that presence is all we have, like with meditation, what's cool about it to me as well is it's almost like you have this safe, sacred space where there's no problems, no chaos, and you have access to it at any point. It's like a retreat that you can access at any moment. So I think that's something that's exciting about it, is no matter what's going on, you can quiet the script, you can close your eyes, and you're in a safe place where none of the problems that you have exist if you're present enough. So
I want to hear from you what meditation's done for your life, because again, you are one of the people that turned me on to meditation. And back in the old finance job, your ass used to go outside for 45 minutes every single day, find a window to go meditate in the park, Bryant Park. And I was like, this guy, man, like always makes time for his meditation. It was so core to who you were at that time. But I'm curious, like what it's done for you, how that process started.
It's amazing how much time of the day you can get through with long bathroom breaks and meditation. No, I think it's exactly what you're saying. What meditation allows us to do is take a moment, close your eyes, and you watch these thoughts coming in, and you realize that you can't be both the object and the observer. So if I'm looking at that post over there, I can't be the post because I'm looking at it. It's called the object-subject relationship. And when you sit and you can clearly watch your thoughts, you think, well, if I can see this thought, it must not be me. What that does is it creates a little sliver of space. And that sliver of space is an opportunity for you to either engage with a thought or passively let it move past you. And when you have that space, I think everything in your life changes, because now you're not on this script that's constantly running, right? Like I'm thinking of a lot of people that live chaotic lives. We all know this person where it's like, if one thing wasn't happening, they would immediately find another problem another fire to go extinguish. And when you engage in a practice like meditation, all you're doing is you're saying, look, I'm not my thoughts. I don't have to judge or label my thoughts. I simply have the option to sit back, let this inner roommate, which is coined by Mickey Singer in The Untethered Soul, which I know I've recommended to you 1,000 times. I recommend it to everyone. But it creates that small sliver of space, and you can live in that space. You can access it at any time, like we talked about. And it gives you a level of being in the world and a sensibility that again, I think we all have access to, but few take it because at times it can be easier to like forfeit that agency and let the thoughts and be these rats on a wheel.
Yeah.
So that's what it is for me.
Very well said. I think we should have had you run the intro with that one. Goddamn.
No.
I think
You're cooking.
yeah, that slice of space is the exact thing that Vipassana teaches. To basically body scan, understand your sensations. Our bodies are just comprised of millions and millions of small atoms. And if you are still enough, you can start to feel these atoms moving, essentially, is the idea, right? Like if you get to know your body, you get to know the sensations, and we as humans react to the sensations of our body. So sensations can be pleasant or unpleasant. Unpleasant sensations are pain, and your body, obviously, if you're like, my ass hurts from sitting on this rooftop, you're going to move, right?
Yeah.
But you're reacting to that pain. And the same goes with pleasant sensations of, you know, if we're not careful and we react to pleasant sensations, it can also lead us to a place of misery because we become attached to those specific outcomes. And so anyway, back to your point, full circle, it's like that space and creating that object to subject relationship is what Vipassana is. But there's, that space that's created that ultimately can lead to a much more peaceful life.
My last question that I wanted to ask you was going to be, can you expand on clinging and resisting? You essentially just nailed it. So maybe if you wouldn't mind expanding a little more on clinging and resisting. And I know that sounds like, it sounds easy. It's like, don't cling on to the good things and don't resist the bad things. And this theme has come up a lot in our discussions, especially recently, going through stuff in life where you're like, you know, your head can know like, I don't want to cling to this because it's causing me misery. But your heart is like, you know, wants what it wants, or like wants to be away from the pain. What did you learn about it in this experience? What is clinging? What is resisting?
Yeah. I mean, in my experience, you know, and I don't speak to it as well as any of the teachers could, but in my experience, I had gotten used to attaching to different ideas that I had in my mind. And when you cling on to an outcome, so for instance, I want to start a business, but I won't be happy until XYZ, then you will just be in this miserable place until you achieve that. And that is what these sensations are really telling you, is like, this feels good because I'm achieving. And when you achieve, it's like, I want more of that. And it creates this like hyper loop of yearn for something. And the same goes with pain and aversion. And what the core teaching tells us to do is to live life with equanimity. So to remain balanced in your approach to sensations, and instead of judging, my ass hurts, or you know, that I liked the fact that this meditation session ended. It teaches you to live with this more balanced approach so that you don't react. And I think that was the biggest takeaway for me, is just like, when you hear things and you observe things, instead of immediately letting your mind react, it was like, sit with that emotion and that sensation and let yourself feel it, and then come from a more balanced approach in your response.
So let me ask you this. I'll put you on the hot seat with a question that I think a lot of people are curious about. I remember I had a conversation with one of our friends a while ago where I was talking to him about, I think I was recommending maybe The Untethered Soul or the book by Alan Watts, and talking about meditation. And I'll always remember this question. He said to me, he's like, yeah, but like, you know, this sounds great, but if I do tame this, yearning or this ambition or this striving, maybe I won't be as ambitious. Maybe I won't be as driven to accomplish that. So how does someone balance this idea of you can have equanimity, you can have everything you need, you can be present, but fuck, maybe I won't be like white knuckling and striving that hard. It almost feels like you have to have trust that where that equanimity will take you is a place that's more advanced than this goal that you have, which I think takes a lot of maturity. But how would you say you balance this idea of, because you're someone that I know, you're one of the most ambitious people I know, where, you know, you want to be successful, as do we all, and you have a very strong drive towards that. So how do you balance that with the knowledge that you have, where it's like you don't need to cling to material things, you don't need to be successful? I think that's something that people struggle with.
Yeah, and it's a great question. It was honestly one of the core questions that I had throughout the week, and ultimately I asked one of the teachers, I was like, listen, for better, for worse, I feel like the yearn for outcomes got me to a place in life that I am happy with. Like I am very fortunate, and I'm grateful for the place that I got as a result of me chasing bigger goals. And, you know,
and not
some
being
of the,
satisfied.
Yeah, and not being satisfied, right? So how do you balance and bridge those two things of like, you know, living a peaceful life where you have that balance and striving and wanting success? And the answer, and I don't know if it's going to do it justice, probably not, but you know, he basically articulated that it is okay to want to provide for your family and your community, but it's remaining balanced as you do those things. And so they teach that everything is constantly changing. And so when you reach that goal and that, you know, that quote unquote success, then what? You know, that success is going to fade. It's constantly changing. And so if you attach, you know, your self-worth into that success, well, tomorrow something's going to happen that probably humbles you in a lot of ways. And then you're in a totally different situation, right? So it's experiencing those wins, but understanding that everything is always changing. The sun's going to rise, it's going to fall, but it's still okay to want success and to provide for your family, but just under this premise that things will always change.
What's crazy too is, you know, it all makes sense, this whole striving, what you just described as clinging and resisting. But what's crazy is when you realize that even purely good things, it's all connected. So for example, if I was just to hand you $100 bill, it's like, awesome. There's nothing bad about that. But even the good things, like even being handed something nice where it looks like receiving, it comes with an embedded contract. And the opposite pole is when you receive something, it comes with the threat of losing that thing. And when you get something good, it's impermanent. You will lose it eventually. If not suddenly or soon, then with death. Like you can't take anything with you. So every good thing comes with a contract of a bad thing. And that's why it's such a vicious loop, is you cannot achieve your way to peace. You can't collect and stack your way to happiness. Every good thing you get comes with the anxiety that's inherent in losing that thing. I think Alan Watts does a really good job of talking about that, but it's crazy when you realize lottery winners don't actually necessarily become any happier, not even a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's multiple studies that have been done that show, I think it's like a year later, their happiness levels are back like to the exact same. Yeah.
Which is crazy. And another, like, you know, disclaimer, privilege, everything aside, because people are struggling and money can solve a lot of those things and can bring a lot of happiness. But past a certain level of income, there's actually like a 0.0 correlation in dollars to happiness. So it's once your needs are met and you're provided for, excess doesn't bring happiness.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what you're touching on and what you learn in this retreat is something that's like plagued the world for a very long time, is
Yeah.
this lie we've been sold that like, you know, you can get a lot of things and you're going to find peace and worth and purpose in comfort, because comfort doesn't equal happiness and purpose.
Right. Yeah, you nailed it on the head. Like, we don't need much to
Yeah.
be happy. And that's an empowering reminder.
And this even goes without saying, like with the hedonic treadmill effect, where we get used to the good things. So like, I wouldn't be surprised if the lottery winners are less happy because your mind gets accustomed to a certain level of ease. And then if you lose it, you're even more screwed than before, because we adjust our expectations to accommodate the extra things. And then if you lose it, so yeah, with that dollar or $100 bill I'm handing you, it's even more likely to cause you misery because your mind gets stoked about having it. And then if it's gone, you're right back to where you started.
Yeah.
So it's like a double whammy.
Absolutely. No, I think you explained that extremely well.
The next thing I want to talk to, and just to wrap up, because I think you've done a really beautiful job relaying your experience and the lessons. And I had a lot of questions coming in, and I think you answered every single one.
Thanks, Landon.
Of course. Thank you. I wanted to give you space and an opportunity to talk about something that you mentioned really touched your heart, which another thing that I really admire about you is this collection of symbols that are deeply meaningful to you. And I know you have a letter from your pa that the timing was just beautiful and divine, where there was a lot said in that letter that moved you at the same time as this retreat. So
Yeah.
I wanted to offer you the opportunity to talk about that.
I'm glad you brought this up. Yeah, so my papa passed away when I was, I think, 6 or 7. And I had like a very, very close bond with him. Although I don't remember a ton of things, I remember like this feeling of just like, you know, second dad energy. And when he passed away, his wife, my grandma, gave me his old watch. And, you know, this was something that obviously to this day I cherish a lot. But in the chaos that was life the last, 4 or 5 years, I don't really wear watches anymore. And I had kind of tucked it away. But for Vipassana, one friend was like, maybe you should bring a watch. And so I was like, okay, like I'll bring a sports watch. And something before I left told me to grab his watch.
Wow.
And when I grabbed his watch, I also grabbed his portrait. I don't know why, but something, again, just told me that it was the right thing to do. And so, like I mentioned earlier, I had set it up on the windowsill, and in moments where I was extremely lonely or in a place of discomfort, I would bring the watch in my hand. So I wouldn't wear it. I would just hold it and use it as a token of warmth from family that wasn't there, friends that weren't there. But yeah, specifically him. And that helped inspire me to continue down that road and continue taking those steps. The last piece that you mentioned, and it goes hand in hand with this divine timing that I've been reiterating in this conversation. Yesterday, I got a package from my grandma that had old film pictures from childhood when he was alive. And there was also a letter that he had written that was so touching that, again, like I just started bawling. And I was on the phone with my mom. He wrote it the same month I was born. And it was basically just like a passage to me as he was on an airplane. And I brought it up because I had an inclination that you were going to ask this. I'll read you the poem that he shared alongside my grandmother. This bridge will only take you halfway there to those mysterious lands you long to see, through gypsy camps and swirling Arab fairs, moonlit woods where unicorns run free. So come and walk with me and share the twisting trails and wondrous worlds I've known. But this bridge will only take you halfway there. The last few stops you'll have to take alone. Yes, Lucas, your Grammy and I will share with you the magnificent journey we have made together, the beautiful love that has dominated our lives, the thoughts and ideas that have been meaningful to us, the dreams that have made our lives and our years together exciting and full, the values that have underscored our actions, the ideals we have pursued, and the joy we have experienced in watching your mother, your Aunt Diane, your Uncle Scott, our children become loving, caring, nurturing parents. Then in time, when you have seen the unicorns and mysterious lands we have seen, you have walked the twisting trails with us, have experienced a good part of the wondrous world that has been so much a part of your Grammy and Papa's lives. And as you spread your wings to fly with confidence and self-worth, we shall leave you secure in the belief that you will be able to complete your journey over the bridge. What we give you, Lucas, are memories and the love you will feel, which we have shared with your mother and father and the rest of the family. Be ready for a glorious and memorable adventure. Grammy and I are anxious to begin your journey over the bridge with you. And
wow. Oh,
it was, I can't tell you like how much I felt in reading that, because it was the exact experience I had felt with Vipassana, of like seeing a path ahead and knowing that people could help get me to that path. But you got to take that path. And you're the only one that can guide you through it. And so, yeah, man, so much gratitude for the
wow.
timing. And it goes back to that same principle that I've been touching on of like getting back with my core values and just feeling so much lighter and happier.
Dude, thank you so much for sharing, bro.
Yeah.
I love you, dude. That was really beautiful.
Thanks, bro. I love
Just
you too.
that idea of empowering you with all of their memories and life experience and handing you that and saying, let that wings carry you forward, is just the most beautiful thing. Like, that is a beautiful poem, dude.
Yeah. It was
Wow.
just very thoughtful, you know, and a reminder of like, you know, the 20 minutes that it took him to write that on a flight, and how much that has stuck with me in the last 24 hours and how much it meant to me. And will carry me the rest of my life, is like just a reminder to all of us, like those little thoughtful moments means so much. And that's what happiness is. That's what life is about, is like showing up in that way for your people, but most importantly for yourself. And I don't know that I've ever felt a place where I felt that sincere love until now.
Wow. Well, I think that's a hell of a way to close. And what an incredible man, just to be able to write that, you know?
Yeah.
It shows just
Hats off.
Yeah.
For sure.
Wow.
I want to thank you, brother, for being a companion on the path and holding space for my cries. And also just, yeah, the education and the love that you share with the world. One of my favorite things about you, man, is something we were touching on today, is from the outside looking in, you know, you might represent this curveball of a character and, you know, too cool for school guy. You've got outstanding taste and style. but when someone talks to you, they feel like they're the center of the world. And you have done such a good job of holding space for me over this journey, and also just educating yourself so that you can articulate things in a way that resonate with other people. You have an extreme gift to do that, and I'm excited to continue to learn from you and appreciate and love you, brother.
Thank you, bro. Love you too. And that what you just said I do is exactly what you're doing, right, with this podcast and having this platform, and I can already see it changing people's lives. So I'm just happy to be a little small part of it, give you space to tell this story. And yeah, like we said with the water balloon, like I think there's going to be many more adventures that we need you to tell us about and need you to unpack these learnings about. The world's hungry for it. So thank you.
Big love, brother.
Big love.